Thank you, Mr. President. It is late in the evening, but this is an important matter. Every single member in this body took an oath to defend the Constitution of this state and the United States. This bill is unconstitutional under the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. I mentioned in some questioning with Senator Middleton the idea of the tyranny of the majority. What the tyranny of the majority means is that when the majority feels most comfortable with the position that they are able to suppress minorities and coerce them. And this was the point of the Bill of Rights in the U.S. Constitution. It was to lay out rights that are so integral to our democracy that a government may not intrude upon them. And one of those rights in the Bill of Rights was the separation of church and state, not because our founding fathers were not devout and religious, but because they were. There's been a lot of discussion about Kennedy versus Bremerton School District, a 2022 Supreme Court case that sets a new test for balancing the First Amendment rights of free speech and free exercise of religion with the prohibition on religious coercion by the government. In a 6-3 vote, the conservative court found that Coach Kennedy's post-game prayer on the 50-yard line was protected speech because of three things. Listen carefully, because they apply to everything we do here. The three things were that the school did not sanction, authorize, or organize the prayer. 2, that the coach's prayer was outside his official capacity as a teacher. It wasn't part of his teaching because it was after the game. And 3, that it was protected speech because it did not require a captive audience of the students. It was after the game, when people were leaving the game, they were singing, dancing, going back into the locker room, and indeed, none of the students participated with the coach on his 50-yard line practice of praying after the game. So, no school authorization, organization, or requirement. The teacher was not acting in his official capacity as a teacher. And 3, there were no students coerced into participation. But take this bill in contrast. This bill requires the school to post just one version of the 10 Commandments and no others in every single classroom, so it fails the first test of Kennedy. Second, it's in the classroom, during classroom participation, during the school day. It's intended to influence the students during the school day. So it fails the second test. And 3, it is to a captive audience of students who must participate in the class and therefore must be in a classroom with this visual experience. It fails all 3 tests of the Kennedy court. The conservative majority in that court noted that although school employees are vital role models, not all they say and do is in the scope of their school duties. In fact, the court raised the example of a Muslim teacher wearing a headscarf, or a Christian teacher praying over her lunch, neither of which would be said or done in the scope of their school duties. The conservative majority also reaffirmed that the original intent, and where is Senator Middleton? Because I want him to hear this as well. The original intent of the Establishment Clause was to prevent the government from coercing citizens into religious observation. I quote the court, "Coercion along these lines was among the foremost hallmarks of religious establishment the framers sought to prohibit when they adopted the First Amendment." While Coach Kennedy's silent prayer after a football game doesn't cross the line into coercion, Senate Bill 10 rushes the line and does a victory dance in the end zone of coercion. SB 10 requires the school to exclusively display the Christian 10 Commandments. The author refused every attempt to include any other religious tradition or text, suggesting that these religions are neither part of America nor Texas history and tradition. Senate Bill 10 requires every classroom to include this exclusive version of the 10 Commandments on its walls. The bill intends for captive audience of in the classroom to be exposed and influenced by this exclusive, government-sanctioned version of this religious text. Colleagues, most Texans are religious. But I would venture Texans do not want religion crammed down their throat by their government. Texans don't even want their own religion crammed down their throat by their government. I am a religious person. I pray every day, usually several times a day. I do it, I pray to calibrate my actions with my faith, to remind myself to calibrate my actions with my faith. I don't do it because I am coerced by my government. And in fact, a faith coerced is not faith. Politics masquerading as faith is the evil the separation between church and state is designed to prevent. To ensure religious freedom for all, we must never establish a state-sanctioned religion. And that is what this bill does. So I urge you, please, to protect religious freedom for all by voting against this bill and upholding our founding fathers' commitment to the First Amendment.
Thank you, Senator Eckhardt.